Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Carlisle, the Board of Selectmen meeting for the town of Carlisle on Tuesday, February 26, 2019. As customary, I will read through the agenda. At 7 o'clock, we will be doing community input. At 7:05, the acceptance of the Long Ridge Road trail easement. At 7:15, we will have town council here to discuss the response to the petroleum release at the fire station. At 7:30, we will talk with town council about the interview process, just to chat through, do's and don'ts of interviewing. At 7:45, we will discuss some of the proposed town meeting warrant articles, the town clerk general bylaw amendments, the solar working group, solar leases pilot zoning amendment, agricultural commission's right to farm bylaw, and supplemental complete streets design funds of $50,000. At 9 o'clock we will be doing, so that's the bulk of the evening. At 9 o'clock we will be doing cemetery deeds. At 9:25 town administrators reports. At 9:35 liaison reports and minutes approval. And at 9:45, we will be entering into executive session. At that point, when we come out of executive session, we're not going to have any more public discussion. So anybody can leave it after before the executive session. I may take some of these out of order, specifically to fill in time. We may take the cemetery deeds, the town administrators reports, and the liaison reports and minutes approval out of turn. So with that, I'm going to start off with public input, and I want to go first. I want to acknowledge a tragedy that happened to a Carlisle resident, William Shaw, who is age 9 and died in a ski accident on February 19th. It's a tremendous loss to the Carlisle family. And all of our hearts and thoughts go out to his family and his friends. And I also want to announce that because of this, from tomorrow until there is, just so everybody knows, there is a celebration of life on Saturday, March 2nd at 1 p.m. At the First Religious Society, right up here on School Street. So I've asked Tim to make sure that the town's flags are flown at half-mast between tomorrow and Saturday when that celebration of life happens. So again, our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends of William. Does anybody have anything they want to add? Okay, so let's ask if there's any other public input. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the acceptance of the Long Ridge Road trail easement.
Okay, this is the acceptance of a conservation and trail easement at Long Ridge Road, and because it's a result of a ZBA decision, and we have a ZBA member here, I might ask if Steve Hinton would kind of tee this one up for the board.
Come on up and have a seat.
Here or?
Right here. That way, you never know if you'll get
Invited
that
to the
chair
front
that goes
table.
up and down.
Yeah, but that often results in more work. when I get close to the table. Just briefly, it was the intent of the ZBA to provide a neighborhood trail access to the back undeveloped part of the property due to the high density of construction on this project. The idea was to reserve a right to build a trail in the future should the neighborhood and the Trails Committee want to do so. The specific location of the trail is not defined at this time because that was left for the future when and if a trail is constructed. So when you read the document and you look at the drawing, it's not immediately clear, but the purpose of the easement is to allow a through trail from 100 Long Ridge Road to the far back corner of the property where another trail easement already exists and connects to a road. So they get a through trail and complete access to the back 3.4 acres of the property. I didn't say my name and street address, is that okay?
Put that in a minute.
You might find yourself. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So, just to give you, there are three in the document, as you read the document, there are three areas. There's this area, there's this area, and then there's the 3.4 acres, which comes all the way over to here, okay? There's a trail easement right here. And the idea is to create a trail easement up through this 40-foot corridor, and then from this point forward, it's wherever it works out to go, to be determined in the future, so that we end up right here.
Was there already a trail easement over here, or some kind of easement?
Well, there is right here. So this section of land is right here.
Okay, I thought that there was already one on the property, but I guess not.
There is a touch point to the blood trail here.
Uh-huh.
But no, not on the property. We're arranging for that as part of in other words, it was one of what you have in your hands is a condition of the comprehensive permit process.
Yeah, because the other one, that goes up to Suffolk Lane, right?
I believe so, but
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I only walked this property how many times?
I don't know. Too many.
Yeah.
But at this time, no one is expressing a strong interest to do this. We're trying to reserve a right so that in the future, should people want this,
Yeah.
then it's papered in and ready to go.
Carrie, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Luke?
No.
Sounds good.
Be back away before I'm getting another assignment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Make the motion.
So there's a motion.
Okay. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve and execute the conservation and trail easement as granted by Jeffrey Brem and Lisa Brem, owners of the premises located at 100 Long Ridge Road, Carlisle, Massachusetts, to the town of Carlisle, in the care, custody, and control of its Conservation Commission pursuant to Mass General Laws 40, Paragraph 8C, a perpetual conservation and trail easement over the area of the premises consisting of approximately 3.4 acres and identified as the restricted land, part of EUA-1, as shown on a plan of land entitled Master Site Plan and Easement Plan, Birch Farm, 100 Long Ridge Road, Carlisle, Mass., prepared for Lifetime Green Homes LLC by Meisner Brem Corporation, as well as a perpetual conservation and trail easement over the 15-foot wide conservation trail areas shown on said plan as the 15-foot wide pedestrian trail easement and limited use area, 15-foot wide pedestrian trail easement.
Sorry, I missed that. Could you do that? I'll second.
You got all that, John?
Cut, paste.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Brown, aye.
Kissinger, aye.
Oscar Lilo, aye.
Lewis, aye.
Okay.
That's right. Everything's got to be roll call.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much. I should have acknowledged at the beginning that it's probably obvious, but Kate is out today. Town council response to petroleum release at the fire station. Hello.
Hello, so I'm Rebecca Lacey from Yaris and Harrington. I work with Town Council Tom Harrington.
And my name is David Foss. I'm a licensed head professional, LSP. I work for a company called Wilcox and Barton, and we're the environmental consultants initiating work at the fire station.
Great.
And so for the folks at home, and just to refresh your memory, since it's now been a few weeks, I'll just kind of recap where we are with this. So an underground storage tank on the fire department property was removed in December. Soil and groundwater was sampled. Petroleum was found in groundwater at concentrations required to be reported to the Mass Department of Environmental Protection under the state's hazardous waste law, Chapter 21E, and the regulations under that law, which are known as the Mass Contingency Plan, or the MCP, which I'll be using that acronym. So the fire department engaged Wilcox and Barton to make the report to DEP and to take the next steps that the MCP requires. So they had an initial contract to do that work. Wilcox and Barton did that work and then submitted a proposal to do the next steps required. And regarding that contract, the board authorized part of the contract, which was to sample private wells within 500 feet of the release. But I know you all wanted to better understand the town's legal responsibilities before authorizing the additional work. So that's where I came in. So the town, and in the meantime, the town actually received, as always happens, received a notice of responsibility from DEP, which that always follows up a report of a release, stating, finding the town to be the responsible party since it is the property owner, and explaining the town's initial responsibilities under the MCP. And I provided you a memo kind of elaborating on those responsibilities. And just to recap the very key points, the big picture points, the MCP includes certain explicit requirements, such as to submit an immediate response act, in this particular case, to submit an immediate response action plan within 60 days of the notification to DEP. But to a large extent, under Massachusetts Hazardous Waste Regulatory Scheme, licensed site professionals like David are authorized to make many of the judgments about what remedial activities are necessary. To some extent, LSPs kind of stand in DEP's shoes. So Wilcox and Barton and David have drafted an immediate response action plan outlining the next steps that, in David's judgment, are necessary. And essentially my message to you is I strongly recommend authorizing Wilcox and Barton to carry out those steps. And especially because the IRA plan must be submitted to DEP within the next couple weeks,
It's due by March 7th.
March 7th. So that's going to specify the steps, that are intended to be taken, and so it would be good if by that time, those steps have been authorized. So I'm here to answer any questions you guys have about the legal responsibilities and implications.
And I'd be glad to give an update as to kind of where we are now.
That would be great if you do that.
So the tanks came out of the ground actually in December. It wasn't until we got our lab results back from the tank grave water sample that all of a sudden we had the data that was greater than the Massachusetts drinking water standard. And the DEP's policy is you shall sample every house or every private well within 500 feet, public or private well, within 500 feet. And to date, 4 residences have been tested. All their results were non-detect. I've communicated that with each of the homeowners directly. The town hall well was sampled, non-detect for all parameters. The fire station well was tested, only had 1 compound detected, which we actually attribute to an old gasoline release in the center of town, because the compound that was detected in the fire station well was not found in our tank grave water sample. So we're not linking it there. And that 1 compound was detected at a factor of 100 times less than the standard. So there's not a risk for drinking water at any of these public or private wells. But so basically, in the immediate aftermath of the release, and at the request of DEP, their initial email was, we suggest you do this, and then the notice of responsibility said, you shall do this. We've done that. There are 3 homes still within 500 feet that have not been tested. 2 of them we've been in touch with, and we couldn't make the logistics happen when we were out sampling 2 weeks ago. And the 3rd has been non-responsive. So I've been working with Linda Fantasia to try to communicate with these folks. The 2 people who were not available in February have said, oh, we're back and available. And so if we're moving forward with any of the other work, if that gets authorized, we'll conduct the sampling at the same time. So we don't have to mobilize a staff person separately. When we have people at the site, the fire station doing work, we'll make logistics to coordinate with those homeowners, at a time convenient to them, whether that's during business day or at the end of our work day when they're home in the evening to sample those wells. So with the submittal of the IRA plan, which does have to happen in the next week, which Tim and I have all both looked at and reviewed, and I've shared with Rebecca's office, we will transmit that data to DEP basically to let them know we've sampled all the private wells we've had access to, and that everything has been non-detect. So from the big picture, I'm not worried that there's a big plume that's leaving the fire station property. But we do have to do the nature and extent evaluation. We have to do the testing on the fire station property to get our arms around the problem. And then with that information, I can give you a scope for cleanup. Like, so right now, we're doing testing to say, how significant is this? So knowing that the fire station well and the town hall well were non-detect is great. That means I know it's not really big, but we do need to wrap our arms around it and determine if any soil or groundwater cleanup is needed at the fire station property.
If those tests all come negative, is there cleanup that still has to go on?
No, and if they come back negative, that would be great news. I will be surprised if the groundwater comes back negative. Based on the sample we took from the tank grave, the levels were pretty high. It wasn't like just above the drinking water standard, it was way above the drinking water standard. So I'm expecting that, I mean, the geology there is unusual. We have a bedrock outcrop like right by that utility pole. So I think we're gonna find this kind of pocket of soil and groundwater kind of right there. But I don't want to speculate too far, but I'd be very surprised if everything came back completely favorably. But I don't think it's big, based on the favorable results from the fire station and town hall.
And so when you say you'd be surprised if they all came back, are you saying like the borings may come back positive, or you think some of the wells may come back?
I think groundwater, if we sample groundwater and it's below the drinking water levels, I'll be very surprised. Because us taking a sample from the tank grave and having concentrations 100 times higher than the standard, I'd be surprised if we put in a well, 10, 15 feet away and didn't get similar results. So I'm expecting us to find some groundwater contamination there. But if it's really limited, the remedies, like, if soil removal could do it, we'll recommend that. Say, hey, let's do a short-term dig and be done with it. If it turns out that it's more of a groundwater problem and not as much of a soil volume, there are treatments like putting chemicals in the ground that break down petroleum. There's other technologies we can use to treat the water as well. So that's part of my expertise, is to say, here's what your problem is, and let's find the right tools in the toolbox to fix it. But I think, based on my experience at similar sites, I would expect us to be dealing with a localized groundwater problem. And again, we're all on private wells, so we're in a Massachusetts GW1 area, so we have to clean up the site to that drinking water standard. So that's the most restrictive standard of the Massachusetts drinking water standards.
And the thought is that this came from the tank over time, or was it a part of the removal of the tank?
Oh, no, it was not from the removal. The tanks that came out of the ground looked sound, like the actual tank vessels looked sound. So I've spoken with fire department staff, Interim Chief Rubenstein and Lieutenant Saros. And so I don't believe the tanks, the actual vessels, were the source of the release. But I do believe it was the tank system. So whether that is a piping problem in the past, or a surface spill in the past, or affiliated with filling, like an overfill at the fill port, I think that's the most likely scenario. Like, where our water sample was collected was right in the tank grave. So where the tanks were, but the dispenser island and the piping, this is not like, if the tanks were where Tim's sitting, the dispensers were at the other end of the table. Like, it was a very small area. So us taking a water sample there the source could have been from the dispensers or from fueling operations. So the tanks did not have holes in them and were sound when we removed them. So I suspect it was something at the surface or in the piping.
I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marlene. Yeah. No, I just had a question last time where the borings and everything were gonna be, but I got it here, so.
Do you have a copy of?
Yeah, it's a much smaller version, I'm not, yeah, no, that
Would
was-
you like a larger version?
No, I'm good, thanks.
He's young.
I
You
could
can
also,
see it from here.
I can loan you my glasses. if that's helpful.
Yeah. What are you trying to say?
Carrie, do you have any questions?
Well, is it likely that, this situation notwithstanding, is it likely that if you went and looked at any one other in-the-ground tanks before they were removed and sampled the soil around them, you would find this same level of contaminant based on spilling or what have you?
That's very hard to say. It has everything to do with the age of the facility and like kind of maintenance history. So I've seen some old DPW yards where, so there didn't look to be bad housekeeping here. Like we didn't see evidence at the surface that things were not well kept, which is why I'm thinking it might have been a fuel line or something that was not readily visible and easily observed. So I'd say about half the time when we remove tanks these days, we're finding evidence of contamination. So, and these tanks aren't that old, right? The building, I think, was built in the late 80s, 86-ish. So, they had reached their lifetime. Like they have like there's the 30-year tank. So it's appropriate to be replacing it, removing it, and replacing it. Often when we find older tanks or older facilities. So I guess I don't want to speculate and kind of extend it out to other facilities, but about half the time when we do tank removals now, we're seeing contamination.
I guess we.
Any other questions, Carrie?
No, it seems like you could find this wherever you looked for it.
I mean,
Wherever
part of the process when people are replacing tanks is to remove the old ones, and so the answer is yes, but then we have to resolve it. Like we're following the regulations that apply,
Right.
and
Right, I understand.
and staying within the scope of the law. And part of my role as LSP is to design an assessment and cleanup that addresses the issue, but also suits your purposes. Like I'm not trying to turn this into a science project. We're not going to go crazy and say, oh, let's drill and drill and drill. We're going to see what the problem is and help you find a solution.
Any ballpark sense of how much this is going to cost at the end of it?
Just stole my question, Carrie.
So I'm not allowed to say, here's what I think yours will cost, but I can say, based on past experience at places that are similar, that
Yes.
that a typical cost, and this is going to be a big range, so you're going to say, really, give me more detail, but would be in the like 10 to 100,000 range. So I would be surprised if it's much more than that. I'd be surprised if it's less than that. So, but after we do testing and testing the groundwater, I can give you a much better refinement on that estimate. But that's kind of the scale that we're talking about. And part of me being able to put the high-end number on is knowing that the potable well at the fire station, the potable well at town hall have been non-detect. So when these things get really expensive, and I know 100,000 is not a small number, but when they get really expensive is when the plume is now migrated off and affected a lot of people's drinking water wells. So the fact that I already have confidence that we're dealing with an on-site issue means that we're really kind of much closer in than.
Given the frequency that this happens and the very high standard that we have to meet, in your experience, has anyone been able to get a waiver from remediation, as you described it?
No, so the one pathway that allows a long-term delay is submitting a request for a statement of financial inability. So basically, we're insolvent and don't have the money to do it. And so some impoverished property owner could play that card. I don't believe any municipality in the Commonwealth has played that card. I've actually heard of it happening in Rhode Island when Central Falls was insolvent and under a lawyer's, I'm forgetting the name of it.
A
receivership. They were able to say, oh, sorry. So, because basically a town is able to raise taxes to pay bills if they have to. So it's hard for a municipality to play the card of financial inability.
And, but I just want to add, because this might also be the kind of thing you're thinking about. One option in addressing contaminated sites is to, rather than cleaning up to, such that you could put a daycare center there, instead you can put an activity and use limitation on the property that is recorded and that says this property, there's some contamination here. This property is limited to certain specified uses. If you're going to try to use it for something else, you need an LSP to come and assess and, possibly clean it up further. So that does save, every little pocket of petroleum and soil from having to be, dug up and disposed of. However, when you're
I was
in,
about to do your however.
You cannot put an AUL on groundwater that is suitable, or that is in the GWN groundwater that could be used for private drinking water, and that is, within an area that is in which private drinking water wells are sunk. You cannot put an AUL on that groundwater. You have to clean up that groundwater sufficient that someone could sink a drinking water well right there.
So even if you were in that financial inability to pay situation in some private property situation, in Massachusetts, you're not going to get away from cleaning up to the drinking water standard. So in every community where GW1 applies, which is either where there's, it could be near public water supplies, like near a reservoir, near municipal well field, or anywhere where there's private wells, including where you live and where I live. So the GW1 criteria is in play. So that's,
Well, I think we should certainly err on the side of safety in this regard, but I was just wondering, given the nature of it, if there was any other possibility.
Oh, do you have any questions?
To me, it's clear what we have to do.
Yeah. And so, any idea as to how much the testing part costs? Because that's what you're looking for.
yeah, so we provide a proposal that's dated January 25th.
Oh, I got it right.
And so after your selectmen's meeting, that was right around that date, I met with Tim and we got the authorization to do the private well testing, because that was immediate, like DEP said, get this done by February 22nd or 3rd, whatever it is. So we proceeded with that. So basically of the $19,900 proposal, there's $15,900 to be authorized. Like that's what we request that you would approve.
And that is $19,000 in addition to the potential $10,000 to $100,000.
You consider that within the 100. Like I'm thinking that 100 number is like including consulting costs and environmental assessment costs. So certainly it's more than 10. but part of that was also that immediate need to do the private well testing, like having $4,000, like bang, we got to go do that. That doesn't really clean up your site one bit, but it makes the nearby homeowners confident that don't have to have any concerns.
So it's more like 39 to 100.
Sure.
And
What do we do if the seventh homeowner continues to be non-responsive?
So it's really up to them. Like if there was a problem, like if any of these other wells were coming up with hits, Linda and I would be knocking on the door over and over and over. Because the data have all been favorable, like literally non-detect, no compound found in any of those wells, our job is to say we have the ability to sample your well for you because here's what the issue is. But we can't make people do that. And so if they're cooperative and they want to have it done, great. We will follow through. We did what the DEP requested. But the DEP requests that we solicit their cooperation, because also I'm not concerned that there's actually any exposure risk. If there's an exposure risk, we'd be pushing much harder, but I'm not really worried about it. So we're following through because we're doing what the DEP would require of any potentially responsible party. Like if you were a landfill and you're contaminating wells in the Western Mass, or your gas station, or you're a town-owned property, we all have to play by the same rules. And the rule is if you exceed GW1, you test within 500 feet. But we don't have to make them let us test.
And DEP will be satisfied, by the, statement that this has been, these people have been contacted multiple times and so forth.
Okay.
Good faith effort.
Okay, is this something?
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thanks, Gary. Is this something that we vote on, or we just?
You should, the last time you authorized part of the scope, and this is the remainder of that scope. I did note that Linda Fantasia and Bert and Tony Mariano are here. I didn't know if they wanted to say something to the board as well.
I do have one question.
If you could come up, sorry, it's just so that everybody on, there's nothing there, but.
To the invisible
I will
mic.
see it, I will see my.
No, I can.
Okay.
Question from a practical point of view is, I understand the money, but it's also the time frame, because it will remain a mud pit back there until we're able to do whatever we have to do under the soil, and then we can repave it. Is it weeks, months, hopefully not years?
So if this gets authorized, we're going to try to go out and drill, weather permitting, in the next couple weeks. We'll get that first round of data back 10 days later, and then we can talk about strategy. So if the actual remedy is a soil dig, then it's great that you haven't spent any time paving, because we don't want to rip up brand new pavement. If the remedy is not digging and it might be injecting some chemical in the ground, we'll communicate that to you and we'll say, here's a strategy for doing it, but you could pave as soon as the weather conditions are favorable for paving. So we'll work with you on that. And the reason Wilcox and Barton is even at the table is because we were assisting with the tank removal process, and we're continuing to work with the fire department with respect to the tank associated with the generator and getting that upgraded. So we'll kind of have people around and doing things. We want to make sure logistically that makes the most sense for the fire department.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bert.
Either of you,
Hi, Tony Mariano, Board of Health, Water Quality Subcommittee. I don't have much to add. I think David did a great job of explaining where we're at. And one thing I did want to point out is it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise that we, with the water supply wells that have been tested, that we found out we have no detected contamination at all. The problem that we've had for the past 20 years with the MTBE in town, Steve and I just had a discussion back there. We fully expected to see at least a trace amount of MTBE because the wells within that 500 foot radius do fall within the area we'd expect to see it moving from the center of town and where we've seen it in the past. So it's real good news that has dissipated to the point that it has, and you know, we're hopeful that when we do get the other ones done, we'll see
the only
the
well
same
that had
thing.
MTBE detected was the fire station at a concentration 100 times less than the standard.
And frankly, we expected to see more of that, so that's good news.
Very good news. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
And so I guess pressure on kind of getting the information about how much it might cost would be, this would need to be a town warrant article, would it?
It would be, and the Facilities Committee is actually proposing an article that you'll hear more about at your March 12th meeting. They're proposing a remediation article.
Oh, okay, so there's already a
associated with
placeholder for.
A placeholder for,
Okay,
yeah, the costs associated.
okay. Okay, great. So is there a motion?
Yeah, I don't know, I move that we authorize expenditure of, what's the difference?
It would be
14,
But not to exceed.
15, yeah, not to exceed.
$19,000.
$19,000 for the remainder of the work associated with the underground storage tank contamination at the fire department? Does that work?
For the testing, right?
And maybe specifically reference the proposal dated January 25th.
You're trying to wing it.
Usually everything's prepared for us. I don't know what to do. I gotta think on my own. Come on, I can't do that. Proposal dated, what, February 5th?
January 25th.
25th?
Yep.
Oh, it's a different one.
Could you word it just that, that you move that
Oh,
the,
thank you. It's in there somewhere.
that the entire, that the cost of the entire contract be approved? That way we're not doing over the contract.
Right, yeah. So that the entire contract be, for the estimated total of $19,900 for the work, I guess, yeah, just the work associated with the underground storage tank at the Carlisle Fire Department.
Presented by Wilcox.
Proposal presented by, thank you. Presented by Wilcox and Barton, dated January 25th, 2019.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Kissinger, aye?
Oskalolo, aye.
Brown eye?
Lewis, aye.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just as a point of communication, we're keeping Board of Health, Linda, Tim, and Tony all in the loop, and the fire department staff as we move forward.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. All right, so our next item, so I think it's March 7th, right? We have the fire chief interviews. The fire chief interviews.
Yep.
And so I asked Tom to come in. Kate's not here, but maybe we'll ask her to watch the video. on TV. But I asked him to come in just to talk about some of the do's and don'ts of interviewing and the interview process, and just want to make sure that we're getting the most out of the interview, and that we're asking the right questions and we're not asking the wrong questions. And so, Tom, thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to see you all. Tom Harrington, Town Council. So first question from me. Have the finalists been announced?
Yes.
They have, okay. All right. So, so this is much more about don'ts than do's. And so I think what's important to know for the board, and really for anyone in town who's going to be performing in an interview, is that Massachusetts and the federal government provide extensive protections against discrimination in employment. And furthermore, excuse me, Carlisle is
The
a...
only ones who called this late.
Furthermore, Carlisle is an equal opportunity employer. And what that means is that Carlisle does not discriminate on the basis of age, gender, marital status, religion, sexual orientation, and the like. So I wish there was a specific list of questions you may not ask, because I would give it to you and we'd be done. But there isn't. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about kind of how to approach questions, and I'll kind of go through categories and talk about a little bit about what would be a bad question, what would be a good question, and then happy to take any and all questions. So disabilities. So the first thing to understand is, it's not appropriate to ask someone if they have a disability. If they have an obvious disability, it's not appropriate to ask, when did you lose your eye? When did you lose your leg? Anything like that. It doesn't mean you need to ignore it either. And so the standard advice is you are able to ask questions that would lead to an answer. Are you able to perform the essential functions of the job you are applying for? And more specifically, maybe in this instance, can you carry 50 pounds for 50 yards, right? So it's important that the candidates can do the job, but we're not going to discriminate against them on the basis of a disability. Age, again, not appropriate to ask how old are you? Not appropriate to ask, the tricky, when did you graduate high school? When did you graduate college? You can certainly ask if they're over the age of 18. You can ask if they're legally eligible for employment in the United States. But beyond that, we don't discriminate specifically for people over 40. And I know once the members of this board reach the age over 40, you'll understand why that's important.
I don't even remember 40.
Religion, not appropriate to ask questions about religion. Not appropriate to ask questions about whether or not you go to church. Certainly appropriate to ask if they're available to work on Saturdays or Sundays. If that's an essential function of the job, then we need to know the answer. And if it's possible to make a reasonable accommodation to them, we should do that too. So again, citizenship, not appropriate to ask where were you born, what's your native language, are you a U.S. citizen, what is your country of origin, that sort of thing. We draw the line at, are you eligible to work in the United States? Race, color, origin, sex, gender, address, nothing. And I can't give you a question that's a workaround because that information is not important. Personal, not appropriate or legal to ask how tall are you, how much do you weigh, what's your mother's maiden name, anything like that. Again, to the how tall are you, how much do you weigh? Can you carry 50 pounds for 50 yards? If that's an essential function of the job, then we can ask that. Marital status, not appropriate to ask if a person's married. whether they have a spouse, how many children they have, do they have childcare, with whom do they live, and all those questions are out of bounds. You certainly can ask, do you have responsibilities or commitments that would prevent you from meeting specified work schedules? It's important that person, so the question we want to ask is, can you meet the requirements of the job? Even right down to, do you own a car? Not appropriate, but you can ask, what hours and days are you available to work? So that's kind of the general tenor. I wonder if you have questions or ideas or directions that you wanted to go. A couple of kind of good practices. So I understand that 2 candidates are from outside the town and 1 is from in town. So it's certainly not a requirement, but it's a good practice to have a standard set of questions, at least for the 2 applicants that are from outside of town. The inside of town, there might be questions that you already know the answer to or that don't quite make sense. But again, you don't have to. There's not a real set formula here, other than don't ask the questions that lead to the answers that looks like you're trying to discriminate against the candidate. But if you need information to understand that the person is capable of doing the job, ask it that way.
Okay. So a question I have is, so let's say that somebody volunteers something that would be on the can't ask it question. Whenever I'm interviewing, I always just pretend like I never even heard it. Can you follow up on it, or you just leave it on?
I would leave it
just
alone.
Leave it alone.
Yeah, even if they bring it up, if it's an inappropriate line of questioning, don't pursue it, even if they open the door.
Okay. I guess sometimes I don't drop it if they start talking about their kids, but I guess just because people like to talk about their kids. But I guess we shouldn't be following up on anything like that.
It's really not appropriate. They can respond to questions as they see fit. But yes, it really, from the town's perspective, as an equal opportunity employer, we're not judging someone based on whether they have kids, don't have kids, have 2, 3, 4, or 5 kids. Whatever the answer is, it's really not pertinent to the job.
Okay. I'll stop asking questions soon. But how about, since we're interviewing multiple candidates in one evening, one of the things I've always tended to do is kind of keep my opinions close to my vest until all the interviews are done and not been like glowing about somebody and, when talking to them, or, what do you recommend about, stating opinion about a particular candidate until after everybody has been interviewed?
I think it's appropriate to withhold judgment until you interview all 3 candidates. And, it's if you want 2 candidates to wait upstairs while you interview one down here, they don't. So, sometimes you see 2 candidates sitting in the back of the room while you're interviewing the first candidate, and then they come up. I actually think that's kind of unfair, because they get to hear an answer, think of a better one, and then, if there's consistency in questions, they get an unfair advantage.
And so even though this is a public meeting, we can request them
You certainly
stay
can.
out,
You certainly
Okay.
can, yeah.
even though one is a
In a
resident.
room where there isn't a TV.
Yeah. Good idea.
Okay. Carrie, do you have any questions?
Well, you mentioned the 50 pounds and 50 yards. Are there specific physical requirements that, or did you just use as an example?
I just use that as an example.
So the question is, do we know of any physical requirements for this position that we should be aware of?
There are, and Bert, who you can't see, is shaking his head up and down.
We can produce them. They're from the state's Human Resource Division for Fire and Police. There's a specific list of requirements.
Okay.
And that would be a requirement of the job anyways, that they would have to pass the HRD test for a firefighter.
Yeah, so I think we don't actually have to assess that, but it'd be great if you could send that to
I will.
Tim, and Tim could distribute it, just whatever the requirements of the job are.
Yeah, that's probably been vetted in the process up till now, right?
Yes.
Yes, with the final physical being after
Correct.
selection.
Yeah.
But it's contingent upon.
Yeah.
I think our interest is going to be experience in working with an on-call fire department, which is unusual and different, and in some cases, significantly different from the experience that these folks may have, that some of them may have. I think my questioning would be along those lines of, to determine their understanding of those differences and how they would accommodate them.
I think that's the exactly right line of questioning. You want to get to whether or not this person is the right candidate for this particular job.
Are there any considerations that we should have, because we have an internal candidate and external candidates, of questions we shouldn't ask that might make it seem like there was favoritism, or the opposite of favoritism? Like somebody saying, well, I really think we should have somebody in from outside, or somebody saying, I really think we should hire an internal candidate. Or is there any sensitivities around that?
Well, not so much that you're going to get in trouble for, because it would be hard to discriminate based on that basis. But I mean, certainly in kind of the sense of fairness, the internal candidate will have some information that the external candidates may not have, but may be readily available. So I think you at least want to be sensitive to that. So it is possible to make an internal candidate look really good. If you start talking about fire history and Carlisle and the like.
Okay.
No, I don't really have any questions. Well, question now. What about, so as we go through contract negotiations, right, you think about things like unions, and can you ask that sort of thing? Like, union, so obviously we're not union now, right? But would somebody, a new chief coming in, look to unionize or not, or, if they, try to bring it full-time or partial full-time, or, what their vision of the fire department would be?
So I certainly think it's appropriate to ask what their vision and what their future vision is. That's relevant information for you to make a determination of the candidate. I think other than, so whether or not the candidates have been or were not in unions shouldn't matter. And I don't think it's a requirement of the job.
No, it's
right.
not, right.
Right, so as far as kind of long-term planning, absolutely.
Yeah, so, okay.
No, I've been interviewing for 30 years, so I kind of know these constraints.
So I just wanted to talk through a little bit about what I saw as the process, and
Yeah.
mostly so everybody knows, but also just get your feedback, which I've already talked to you about. We want to make sure that, it's going to be well publicized. Hopefully lots of people will be here. Hopefully lots of firefighters will be here, because we're hiring their future boss. So I want to give an opportunity for people to ask a question, but I want to make sure that it's done in a consistent way, and that they haven't all gone through this. So I also want to make sure that all the questions are appropriate, and that and they're asked across all of the candidates, not just a single candidate. So at the beginning of the meeting, I was going to ask, and I think it's actually been written up, that anybody who has a question to submit the question to Tim or I, and then I will go through them, and I would decide which questions to ask, and I would make sure that those questions got asked of everybody. Does that seem like a reasonable approach?
That's the right approach.
Okay.
And I've seen it sometimes where there's a little bit of open mic. If you'd like to come forward and ask the candidate a question, please do so, which is great. until it goes
Until it's
wrong.
not, yeah.
And then you can't,
Right,
Right,
yeah.
right. And I think that's where I started, and then I realized how wrong it could go.
yeah.
So decided, to kind of keep the control over it. And then, I guess the other thing was, I was thinking about, potentially at the end of the meeting, anybody who had been at the meeting for all three interviews, if they came in for just the last interview, I would not entertain them getting up and just making a statement, but allowing people to get up and make a statement about, their thoughts about the candidates. What do you think about that?
I think that's okay. I think you need to make sure you're listening to what they say, and if you hear a comment that crosses the line, that you get on record, we're not considering that,
Mm-hmm,
I note that he's Presbyterian, we're not considering that.
mm-hmm. Okay. So it's okay, but be careful.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just one other thing, Carrie, and then just as the final thing, do boards in this situation, the reason why we're going through all this is I'm not aware of, at least when I've been on here, when we've actually interviewed more than just the one person that's being proposed as being appointed, right? And so we're just asking questions, but it's just the one person, right? And so, this is actually an interview process, which is why it just feels a lot different to me. Do boards typically just deliberate that night, or is it, okay, thank you very much, and then you talk about it in another meeting? What's typical there?
I don't know that there's a typical there. I think part of it depends on how long you've been at it. If each interview takes an hour, you might want to go home, gather your thoughts, and come back for your deliberative process. But if it's, kind of more a 20-minute situation, and you've wrapped up in an hour and a half, and you still feel fresh, then I think it's okay to get into deliberations.
Okay,
So I think you want to kind of gauge your board.
okay. And we're gonna have a set of questions, right, Tim? Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll have a set of questions, people can ask other questions, but at least it gives everybody a question to ask, because, you will have some set questions.
Will they have had, prior to the interviews, an opportunity to tour the station and meet? Has that happened?
One did today.
He did.
Requested, he had a almost 3-hour tour. The other is, not as far as I know, is not yet requested.
Yeah. Well, one knows it very well.
Okay. Hang on one second. Carrie, you had one other thing?
Well, yeah, a comment about having folks come up and render their opinions at the end. I would feel more comfortable if we would ask them to write us any comments that they had, rather than coming up and stating them. I would just feel more comfortable with doing it that way, but anyway, that's not for me to decide. But my question was regarding scope and clarity of scope. We have a chief of the fire department, we have a chief of police, we have a person who's responsible for emergency preparedness and responsiveness, and I think we've talked about perhaps switching those responsibilities, and I just want to know where we stand on that. Are we firm about who would have that role, and has that been baked into this process so far with the candidates? Do they know the scope in that
You want
respect?
to take that?
Yeah, so that responsibility is gonna change over to Chief Fisher. So it's written into his next contract, which we will be talking about later, or it's part of.
That's part of the executive session.
Yeah, yeah, which we'll be talking about in the executive session, but the plan is to shift that over to Chief Fisher.
And so these candidates understand that that's not part of their scope of responsibilities?
It was probably in the job description, right?
It wasn't specifically included.
Right, it
think
wasn't
it was-
specifically
not-
included.
I think it was,
The job description.
it was?
Oh.
Okay. So we'll want to clarify that with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Good question,
Yeah.
Carrie. And so, following up on your first comment, so you would suggest that we go ahead and we do the interviews, and then we tell people to email Tim any of their comments, and then, because I think our next Board of Selectmen meeting is the following Tuesday. And, we would that those would be distributed as part of our packet, and then we would make the selection on Tuesday? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually agree with Carrie on that. I think, one, it takes the burden off of you to, what Tom said with, wait, no, that's not appropriate. But also, too, I think, some people are just uncomfortable coming up, and especially when there are other candidates in the room, I
Uh-huh.
think, I think it would just garner more of a response.
Mhm.
I think it's a.
Okay.
And I think it's fair to announce, I mean, you can't stop people from emailing,
Right.
but you will have a sense of who sat through all 3 interviews.
Uh-huh.
And you can say, we're really only gonna consider emails from people who sat through all 3
Mhm.
interviews.
Okay. And so, I forgot what I was gonna say. Yes.
Yes, I understand that the interview process, of course, as you're speaking, is a public meeting, a public forum, right? Yes or no?
Yes, it is.
Okay, fine. Does that imply that the townspeople will have a chance to ask questions that they feel that they want to address?
No, that's what we were just saying is.
Okay, fine, that's all right.
The
Just wanted to know.
questions, I will, Tim and I will accept questions before the interviewing process takes place that people may want to have asked.
Yeah.
We'll look through them and I'll decide which ones are appropriate to ask, and I'll make sure that each candidate is asked each question. So that there's, nobody's just getting particular questions asked of them.
Makes sense, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Glad you came out.
I'm gonna stay around.
Nice.
There's some interesting stuff on tonight,
There
I'm
is.
not gonna miss it.
Yeah,
In other words, he's gonna make sure we don't get ourselves. in
yeah,
trouble.
thank you.
Yeah.
We need that from time to, well, we need more than from time to time.
Okay.
All I'm gonna say is when I was chair, I never had to have council come to our meetings. Cover our butts, no. Just saying.
Don't you have something to go to?
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have a quorum. We'd all have to come back.
Okay, moving on. 7:45. The Town Clerk General Bylaw Amendments. Welcome.
Oh, it is, it's lit up, okay. All right, thank you.
If you don't, he'll come up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So good evening, thank you for having me. I won't take too much of your time. We're just gonna talk about the possibility of having the acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 139C, accepted at town meeting. So that would be the proposition of the article. The reason I'm proposing this is because we already do some nice things for seniors, such as the senior work-off program. There are some, sorry, I'm hearing something.
Yeah, is somebody's alarm going off?
Where we have some exemptions that are allowed for seniors. And I think this just kind of follows on with that. There is the proposed wording of the article on your list.
It is going.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. No, it was lighting. Okay, sorry. So basically, I think this would be a great benefit to the town for the seniors, and it's not going to cost the town that much money over the year. We're talking about 20 to 30 people, so max $400 over a year in, in what we would take in for licensure. I think it would encourage those that are 70 and on a fixed income to license their dogs because, that is something that would help them out.
Well, something like half the people or 2/3 of the people don't register their dog in town anyway. I think this is one of the things with the dog, but it is available online now, correct?
To register online,
Yeah,
yes, it
so I think
is.
that'll be huge. Yeah.
And that's been very popular, actually.
Has it? Yeah, good.
And it's for one dog.
Yes, my proposal is to not allow, if they have 2 dogs, not to allow 2 free dogs, but just the first dog. And anyone who has a kennel, not that either. That would be too much.
Okay, so the Mass General Law specifically limits it to people age 70 years or older.
Yes.
That's
Because
the-
what I was asking last time was, you know, why was it 70? Why couldn't we make it so that it was your prerogative a little bit more? You know,
And I
understanding it.
assume that if you wanted to make a bylaw that did that, you could, but this would be an easier thing just to accept this Mass General law.
Uh-huh.
And as you can see on the last page, there's quite a few towns that have already accepted it. There's probably more than that, but these are the ones that responded to me. So some, you know, Acton, Boxborough, they have accepted, and they're neighbor towns, so.
Mhm. Okay. Carrie, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Luke?
No.
No, it's,
And you get the age from the census, right? Because you can't ask.
Right, exactly. No, I can't ask. Self-declarative.
Listening.
Once in a while, something seeps in, yeah. Not often, though.
It's a miracle. Okay. Any further, so what we are doing here is, are we gonna, should we take a position on these now, or is this just
You don't have to take a position, just if the board's inclined to add it to the warrant at the clerk's request.
Yeah,
It
so not,
sounds like
I
you
think we'd
are.
wanna take a position
You
later.
don't have to take
Don't
any
have a
position
position.
tonight, or even say that you're gonna include it, because there'll be an opportunity to do that at one of the March meetings.
Okay,
This is just to gather information about the proposed articles.
okay. This is a pretty minor change. Okay.
I think it's a good one, too.
What's that?
It's a good one, too.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know.
we codgers appreciate it.
Carrie, what's your general thought about it?
I'm as a liaison with the Council on Aging, I absolutely support it.
Okay.
To hear. And it is, you know, the seniors love it in other towns that I've been in. It's just so helpful to them. They get so excited to get something free, so.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, I think you have a general sense.
Okay, that's awesome.
Alrighty.
And there's just one other thing. We are gonna have to take, for some housekeeping, we have 2 Article 16s right now in our bylaws. So what I'm proposing is that we move one of them to be Article 17. So in, May of 16, you voted noise control as Article 16, and in 17, it was revolving funds. So I'm just proposing that we move the second one as Article 17. So that's just a simple housekeeping thing that we'd have to just have
We have
voted.
fewer articles if we have 2 with the same number.
That's true.
16A, 16B.
Well, we actually, you have to vote again to reauthorize the
Right.
revolving funds, so I talked with Tom. There's an opportunity to correct it within the article reauthorizing
Ah,
those
okay.
funds.
So the
Make
noise
it Article
bylaw would
17.
remain the same?
Yeah.
And,
Revolving funds will become Article 17.
okay.
Then we fixed the, I don't know how that happened. I guess the Roman numerals must have
Right, exactly.
confused me.
It's that foreign language.
Somebody's paying attention to details.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it seems like that one's gonna be a
That's
pretty
a
clear one that we're gonna
no-brainer.
wanna do.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, moving on to this, solar. Is that
Or
next?
So we're working
Jonathan,
group.
Melinda are here.
Hello.
Hey, Jonathan DeCock, 130 Oak Knoll Road.
They have the PowerPoint slides. Jonathan, do you want to show them, or do you just want to?
We can show them if you want. Melinda brought the.
I have them.
Other people could see it though, and they could display it on the,
Yeah,
on
we
the-
can,
on cable, right,
do
if
that.
it was presented?
yeah.
Do you want to do it on this one, because I have slides too on my.
I think this way, the
We got a
CCTV will have it,
HDMI.
right?
That's all we need.
Okay.
Do I have to sign into this?
It's gonna be on the, well, I guess we should go over
Yeah, I
the
guess
audience.
you'll have to sit.
We'll go up there, right?
They go up here.
Okay.
The big screen.
Sorry, I shouldn't.
Cinemascope.
There's color copies in your packets.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I've seen these pictures
Color
before.
copies?
Yes.
Fancy.
Yeah.
All right.
Spectacular budget we have.
All right. Now, how would you like me to do this? Facing you guys, or? So, okay, I'll just,
Usually people stand up at the podium.
But
There's no
Alan's
way.
staying up
Already-
there, as you're, you
Yeah.
know, he's dividing your attention.
Well, I've seen
that's okay, he
this.
knows all about this.
You turn Carrie to face the.
Turn Carrie to face the screen, yeah.
I don't know, Carrie, do you want to say it?
I've looked at the hard copy. That looks like a washout to me, the way from here. So I'm not sure I'd be able to see it all that well anyway. But I did review the hard copy several times. So
All right, I'll get started. So Jonathan DeCock, Oak Knoll Road. So I'm here representing the Solar Working Group, which you guys formed like 4 or 5 months ago under Tim in order to do negotiations with Amoresco to actually put canopies up for solar at the school and the transfer station. And so this is kind of the culmination of the work of the Solar Working Group, is to have this warrant article. And so there are 3 main parts to the warrant article. One is we need to update the zoning bylaw for the solar overlay district. We need to include the school plots under that. And we need to allow for the concept of canopies, which are not currently listed in the overlay. And so the main thing about that is the current concept of ground mounts is limited to no more than 12 feet high. And in order to get a canopy up, you need to meet Department of Transportation rules, which has them about 13.5 feet minimum clearance. And so we need to be able to have the canopies high enough to be able to support that. Then we also need to approve a payment in lieu of taxes. And so these modules that will be installed would normally be taxed, but the best way to go about this is to have a well-defined thing that says this is how much you'll effectively be taxed, so that the company's financials work out. They know exactly how much they're going to pay us every year, so we as a town need to approve this payment in lieu of taxes. One of the interesting things about it is it's probably going to be a formula when we go to town meeting based on the size parameters of the system, not a fixed number, okay? Just because the size parameters of the system may change during site plan review, which must happen after the zoning bylaw, okay? Also, we need to approve a lease, so they're going to be paying us, in addition to taxes, they're going to be paying us a lease to lease the space above the parking lot and above the transfer station. And again, the amount that they pay us is a function of which smart block incentive program they end up in, which they will not know until after everything gets signed off. So the amount of the lease is going to be variable. So all of these need to be approved at town meeting, all right? Importance to the town, it's going to provide us overall up to as much as $60,000 a year in revenue if you combine the pilots and the leases and everything works out the way we expect. In addition, it's going to provide very nice canopies at the school for covered parking. And in addition, it's almost certainly going to enable repaving of the school parking lot. It's kind of makes sense to do the two things together. The repaving is necessary right now. The parking lot is pretty messed up. It'll get more messed up when they actually do the solar work. They're going to have to trench through it in order to put stuff underground. And afterwards, it's going to be more difficult to repave because you're going to have things 13 feet above you, and so the paving trucks need to get through there. So it makes sense for us to combine these two things, but that's one of the open discussions we're still having as a working group. In addition, we will, and this is the most important thing for me personally, is we're going to be generating renewable energy. The amount of renewable energy we'll be generating is almost exactly the same amount that the municipal buildings in town use in a given year. So we'll go essentially 100% green for the municipal buildings for their electricity, which I think is really cool.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yep.
You say it enables repaving of the school parking lot. What does that mean? Does this mean that they're paying for it, or it's?
So we've been through a number of different ways that we tried to move this into the project. And what we're coming down to is the best way to facilitate this is for the town to take out a bond to go ahead and do the repaving and effectively use the money from the lease to repay the bond. So, but we are working out the details of that with Attorney Merrill from Town Council.
there's a
Okay,
financial
so that
component
kind of,
to town.
yeah, but that kind of means that we're dedicating the funds from the solar, which was all about renewable energy, for a project that we kind of had to do anyway, which was repaving the parking lot.
Right, so one of the reasons it makes sense to do these together is it doesn't make sense to repave before you do solar, because we'll just cut everything up again. And so it makes sense to do it after we've at least started the solar project. And it also doesn't make sense to do the canopies over top of a crumbling parking lot and then just have to come back and do the repaving underneath them later.
Yeah, I totally get that.
So
but
it's
just,
it's just a combination
So what
thing.
you're saying is that it's a way that it would enable the school, because it would only be the lease for the school that would be tied to this bond?
I don't know how we want to do this exactly by tying it, right?
Yeah,
Most
that makes
likely,
sense.
we would
That's
not
enough.
do something really tying it together, but the fact that the town is now making money means the taxpayers are not going to be burdened with, this really.
Yeah,
if you
but
wanna
that's
look at it that
maybe
way.
the parking
Right.
lot, maybe we'd want to put it towards something else we would.
We could,
yeah.
yep.
So, yeah, the issue is that the parking lot has reached the end of its useful life at 32 years old. So we see it crumbling, and just as you wouldn't put solar panels on a 40-year-old roof, this would be kind of necessary, in order to.
Yeah, I totally get that, and I don't want to beat it up, but it seems to me
No.
But
that
you're right, this is
we
a
have
has a
this
financial
project.
component, right?
We have this project that is renewable energy providing income, and then we have this other thing that needs to get done anyway. Right, and so if we have the income for renewable, maybe we want to use that money for other renewable projects and do this other project we have to do anyway, and not tie the two
Yeah.
together.
We could do that.
Right.
I
Yeah,
think we want to
there's-
do them at the same time.
right.
That
But
totally
for
makes
the-
sense.
So-
It's just the mechanism that.
Yeah, and so we want to make sure that we're not going to mess up and do something that doesn't make sense for us to do, right? So that's what we're trying to figure out, what's the appropriate way to tie this together. And this is still an active discussion amongst the working group, is to try to figure out the right way to do this.
I just think a lot of times, we do, I'm talking right when you start every time. Just on purpose. A lot of times we do these renewable energy projects, but we never actually have the money that we've saved to do on anything else, and I just would hate to lose that opportunity here.
It's a 20-year lease, so the
Yep.
roots of the, did you mention?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
So yes, it's 60,000 a year for 20 years, and the 60,000 is variable, so we'll have to see.
May I? Thank you. So that 60,000 or whereabouts, right, whatever it ends up, how is that actually paid?
So it's paid in two components. One is the payment in lieu of taxes, right? And so that would effectively just go into the general tax budget, I guess. And then there's the lease, and they would pay us, I think it's working out to they pay us quarterly? I don't remember.
I'm not sure the schedule.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's been scheduled yet, but something
Yeah,
like
but-
that.
but it's an
they
actual
pay
check,
us.
it's not
It's
through
an actual
energy
check.
savings or, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Yes.
Well, just goes to tie into what you were saying. So, like we did the lights at the school, right? And it was, what, so $10,000 for the savings a year, or whatever it ended up being, right? But that got immediately absorbed into the school budget, and that savings never really got utilized for other energy-saving projects. That's why I want to make sure that this sort of fund is not just we'll get
Yes.
for electricity or whatnot.
So Town Council Attorney Merrill, I think, if I remember correctly, she said that the funds would go into essentially the general fund. So unless we decided to do something different, but that would be the normal procedure.
Yeah. Possibly you could set up a special revenue fund that could fund future energy project, we could investigate that. The lease payments would go into that, perhaps, yeah. Yeah, but they couldn't be used directly to pay for a paving project. The Finance Committee sees this as, the paving as a separate project entirely.
Okay, good, that's good.
Yeah, so.
And we discussed it last night at the finance committee meeting, and their sense was that, we would move these articles together at town meeting, including the paving piece, so that people understand that this is sort of package deal.
Yeah,
It's
but it's a loose package deal, because the parking lot needs to be done.
a- it has.
Okay. So why this year? And the main reason is that we're at the beginning of an incentive program in Massachusetts called SMART. And that incentive program is currently at a high point and degrades over time. And in addition to that, the current federal tax incentives for a private company are also currently at a high point. The net effect of both of these financially is that we actually can make money while saving the planet. So it's a win-win for us right now. So that's the main thing. If we were to delay until next year and not do this summer, then we would almost certainly have a substantially reduced financial value that we would be able to get out of this, and it might end up being completely eliminated. So, so this is our moment to be able to
But
do
you're
this.
grandfathered in if you do it this year. It's not like next year we could lose it.
No, yeah. Once
Okay.
once all the lease is signed, everything's good, and we're good for 20 years for getting the exact same payment. So, are we ready? The question was, are we going to be ready within 2 weeks? And the answer is almost. We are very close to having the bylaw drawn up. Town Council's been doing a great job working on that. We also need to finalize on the pilot agreement, and we have to go and talk to the Board of Assessors still. We haven't done that yet, but we need to get that taken care of. We also need to finalize the lease agreement. Again, Town Council's been doing a great job for this, and we're very close to that. So I think we're going to be there. We have to figure out the paving plan and how to work all that in. And we need to go before at least like half a dozen town boards and committees and get their positive endorsement for the project before town meeting. And we also plan to hold a couple of public information sessions so that the public can find out what it is that we're doing, or what it is that we're proposing. Okay? So, we have now some excellent renderings. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see them, but you can scroll through them if you want. This is the proposal for the transfer station. Essentially, we'll ring the transfer station in canopies. I don't know, I think they look pretty cool. This would be the view as you walk into, or as you drive into the transfer station. It's kind of what it would look like.
The curbing.
Yeah.
Curves and, yeah, puffy clouds, you bet. Everything is perfect.
One of the reasons for the ring is that when the containers are hauled out, they have to go up at a 45-degree angle. This allows you to draw them out into the center and raise them after that. So it's
I was
an
picturing
elegant
over the
solution.
middle, I love it as a ring.
Yeah, so over the middle caused difficulties because it would have to be like 30 feet up. And so this is going to be much lower. This is a 13.5-foot clearance. So those panels might top out at, 15, 18, 20 feet.
And we still have like lots of flexibility around where dumpsters and compactors and everything could be underneath these.
Yes. The only thing that we have to watch out for is the heavy equipment, when it lifts it up, has to be able to lift it up away from the panels. So, but we need to go over that with Gary Davis still. So that's kind of the view from above. And yeah, so one thing about this that the Board of Selectmen should be aware of, I know when we came before you said, manage the tree cutting so that we don't cut down a lot. We didn't do the others. At the transfer station, there will be some necessary tree cutting in order to be able to make it financially viable for the company to actually get enough sunlight. And so in the next slide, they've pulled out the area that they would like to cut some trees down. It looks kind of large right now, but if you actually look at it, many of it is just individual trees that are scrubbed kind of next to the transfer station there. So it's not as big an area as it might at first appear. It's also not something where it would be visible from the street. So.
And is this, I'm trying to remember back to our solar overlay district, is this entirely within the current overlay district?
Yes, the current overlay district consists of the big triangular plot and then a little square off to the side here that covers that, the shed down at the bottom end. So this is entirely within the
It's
district.
within the current one. But we would, if this district, we would be raising the canopy height.
Yes.
And would we be raising the canopy height only for the section of the overlay district where this is? I know that one of the reasons why we restricted it was because of the neighbors and wanting to make sure that they were comfortable that we weren't gonna be building solar panels along the highway that they would be looking at that would be these giant things.
Right. I don't know right now. We would have to decide how, it depends on how we actually word it in the bylaw. And I don't know which way we're gonna fall on that right now.
Okay, so we might just wanna figure out maybe a way that it could be worded so that it's this specific, and that way the people across the street aren't saying, hey, wait a second, you're changing it on us.
One of the things is that the, unlike the ground-mounted systems, which are these, array of panel after panel after panel, these actually look like carports. They're really not at all unattractive, I've gone around to several of the places where schools have had them in and that sort of thing. And actually, they make great carports for parking your cars under and this sort of thing. And they don't have the negative connotation that the Billerica, the farm across from the prison looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
My favorite one is the one over at Walden Pond, right? And so if Walden Pond's gonna put up a canopy, I think
Yeah, no, I
it's
think.
gonna be
the
pretty
canopies-
aesthetically pleasing.
I think the canopies look great, I'm just trying to think of how we don't have people standing up opposing it. It's still within the overlay district, they could say, yeah, but what's to say, you've increased it to 13 or whatever feet. What's to say now you're not gonna lease that other part there and put up a different type of array, because it's still in the district. So if we could just word it in a way that
Okay.
that argument goes away, but we still get what we need. And I don't think it's a big deal, I just wanna try to make it so that there's nothing that people would worry about.
Yep.
Yep.
So you want to limit the amendment to the zoning bylaw, so that because we're loosening the height restriction, right? But we can limit that loosening of the height restriction to this parcel.
To that part. Not if it's a whole lot of work, but, yeah.
Yeah, we might think of something like requiring it to be over paved surfaces or something. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the concessions that we made over there, was restricting.
There was, at the town meeting when the green community thing came, there were people from, is that a house at that dot on Morse Road?
No.
I specifically remember though, there were people that lived in that area that were concerned, not across the street, the people kind of in the Morse Road area where, if you continue down, they were concerned about the size of the overlay district and the trees coming down and seeing the panels, and so we should, have you reached out to that neighborhood?
We have not yet.
Yeah, you might want to, or else it's gonna be, 'cause, yeah, they were quite vocal at that. I think it was the green community fund, right? That's why we had to do the solar overlay district. What reason was that before? Yeah. Just to alleviate some of their concerns or, address some of their concerns, maybe with less tree clearing or whatnot, but just something so they're not standing at the town meeting, so.
David was having a history.
Yeah, David did.
Okay.
He was chair of the planning board when we did that.
I think one of the concerns was what will be visible from Lowell Street.
Yep, and I don't think it's gonna be much more visible from Lowell Street than the current transfer station based on what they're suggesting.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be substantially higher than the current stuff, and it will be higher than current, it's gonna have to go above the sheds and whatnot. And there's not too many trees on that side, you can see, that they need to cut.
You don't even really notice.
And it's considerably more attractive than a container.
Right. So,
Derail you.
nope, that's okay, and we also have the school, and so,
Sorry, can I just give you a little more information on the last project? So, Jenny Merrill reports that the lease is at Amoresco now. We've given them a deadline of your next meeting to get back all the changes, so the bylaw's done, we'll make that additional tweak, and we should have the lease wrapped up by your next meeting. Back to the lease, or back to the zoning change, so there's an additional change, can you go back one slide? Okay, so there's an additional change we needed to make to the zoning amendments. That kind of white, at the bottom left, that set of canopies is, right now in the district, there's a 40-foot setback. That crosses into the 40-foot setback, but the property owner on the other side is the town. So we've said that we've lessened the 40-foot setback for that canopy in that location, or we've lessened the setback requirement when the abutter is the same entity that owns the property owner. So, just, you'll see that, and it might raise questions, but that's why, because there's kind of a random property line that runs through.
Yeah, it's an artificial property line there for historic reasons.
Right.
So this is the school. Again, I think they look wonderful. It's a big one over the bus area and then individual ones over the others. So, one interesting thing about them, you note that they'll all kind of shape like a Y, right? And that's to cause the snow and ice to go towards the center rather than fall off on people. So you won't have any damage from snow and ice coming off them.
Does that mean that it stays covered in snow longer?
Until it melts.
Yeah. So rather than
Yeah.
until it slides off?
Yep.
Great, okay.
To be clear, Jonathan, the solar district change at the school does not include the woods between the parking lot and the playing fields.
So the specific area of the bylaw will need to cover probably all of the school plots, but there's no intention on putting solar up there. It's just a matter of how you word the bylaw.
Well, then why do it? I mean, why word it that way? Why not word it just for the parking lot? There's no intention.
Well, there's potential to put solar panels on the roof of the new building that was constructed, and there may be potential in the future to add solar capacity to the school property. So that's why it was worded that way.
Yeah, and there were concerns that we may need to go out and do surveying if we started splitting up the school property and say you can do it on this part but not that part. So.
The school property is 4 distinct parcels as well, it's not one
Right.
big, yeah.
So we need to do it on the 4 distinct parcels because the various cabling runs underneath at least 3 of them.
So what are the parcels? Does that include like Spalding? Is that one of them?
It's
Banta's one
the,
of them? Like, what
no,
are they?
Banta's not. So it's, there's 4 parcels. One covers, I think, essentially the Highland building. Then there's one behind the Highland building and one next to that, and then there's one for everything else.
And everything else
Being all the way from the playing fields to the castle. Essentially, everything in there, not including the tennis courts. The tennis courts are their own parcel.
so in order to incorporate the buildings and the parking lot, you have to include all 4 of those parcels?
If we do it by parcel, which is what town council was recommending, right?
That's no problem.
It's rich.
So, are there other things on the school?
Everybody has to buy a white car.
That's good.
Can I ask a quick question? Where does the rain go?
So the rain hits the panels, and there's a small gap around each panel, and so the rain would come down essentially around the panels. And snow and ice will slide towards the center of the Y and then drip down from the center of it as it melts.
So you don't stay dry under them?
You will not stay dry under them, yes.
But it does provide some protection. This was a question that came up with the school board too, what people do about water management. Other places where they've installed these, where Amherst does install these, I had the opportunity to talk with them and get some feedback about water management specifically, and those places didn't opt to do it, and they were happy with that choice because water management would then require channeling the water and redirecting it somewhere else, and it was an added expense to the project.
What are the cost differentials between the two sites? For an equivalent amount of voltaic energy?
I think the pilot and the lease is working out very similar for both of them. The transfer station is slightly smaller in the terms of the total kilowatt, and also slightly smaller in terms of the pilot and the lease. But not by much. I believe the school is supposed to be like 480 kilowatts, and the transfer station was either 412 or 420. Like that. So they're very similar in size.
And then the $60,000 that you quoted returning to the town, that's an annual basis? And is that an expected net to the town? Or is that just a gross number out of which there are going to be numerous deductions, shall we say?
I believe that is a net amount to the town. They will pay us, an actual check for the pilot and the lease each year for 20 years.
That's in addition to the free energy for the municipal buildings, or is that?
No, the energy is not free for the municipal buildings. We still have to pay for that.
You said the solar cells would pay for the municipal.
They will produce enough energy to power the buildings, but we still have to pay for it.
Oh, I see.
And the 60,000, 60,000 is based on the two projects?
Yes.
It's based on doing both projects?
Yes. Well, yeah, so if we, so the SMART program is variable. Right now, they're in block 1. If we can get everything done very quickly, we might actually get into block 1, in which case it might be somewhat higher than 60,000. The 60,000 number is based on our estimate that we're gonna actually hit block 3.
So I have 2 questions. How much are we spending now for electricity for all of the property?
We go through a little over a gigawatt hour a year, and I think that works out to about $250,000 for electricity. Plus or minus.
So this is gonna generate $250,000 worth of electricity, and we're gonna get $60,000 again. So by building this, we're actually just cutting our bill from 250,000 to 190,000.
You could look at it that way.
Okay. My second question is, on this map here, we have the blue lines. Are those the parcels that we were talking about?
The purple lines, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they are purple.
They are to me, but.
Yeah. They are me too.
Yeah, so there's the one that covers the Highland building, that's one parcel. And then there's the parcel that's heading towards the church behind that, I think. Then there's a parcel right there that's just grass covered, I believe. And then the big one covers all of Spalding.
Okay, so why would we include the one that's down below that doesn't have any building, kind of like behind Highland, or the one that's the tennis court? Why?
We're not including the one that's the tennis courts. That one's been explicitly excluded.
Okay, so that's not in the overall design. Okay, and then, so why include the other one? I can see why we would include the Highland one and the one with the buildings.
Just because it's part of the school grounds. I mean, we don't necessarily have
So
to.
it's tennis courts.
Depends, because they're managed by the RecCom rather than by the school committee. So if we were to include that, we would have to do something with the RecCom as well. The tennis courts?
I think that's still,
It's still
school property.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. I just
So-
think we want to, not extend it too far.
Right.
Keep it to what we need it to
But
be.
the idea is not to be so limiting where we can't, if another opportunity like this came up in the future, where we would not have to go through a several months long process to establish a new bylaw or bylaw amendment. The school committee would be able to evaluate, whether it would be appropriate and be able to act on it.
Yeah, it's just sometimes because something was done that way, everybody assumes, oh, well, it was always meant to be. I mean, I think it's just good to have the conversations. But you're saying the tennis court one is not yet,
Right.
so it's 3 parcels that are in.
I'm not sure these are showing the correct parcels.
4 parcels that are in.
Yeah, there's 4 parcels total. I don't know. I thought the parcels over in this corner were smaller, but I could be wrong. So it might be that what's drawn there as a single parcel is actually multiple parcels. Because I think, if I could see down below, I think that's the church right there, so I think that is that whole thing is a separate parcel and isn't included. So I suspect that that area that's covering Highland and the majority of the school over here is actually, if you look on the tax map, is actually 3 separate parcels. But I don't have the tax map in front of me to prove that. But when we looked at it, we decided it would be most appropriate to make sure that they were all covered, because otherwise the line that they have to get from the panels to the back of the school might run into trouble.
Yeah, it totally makes sense, and it's all the buildings. So will you have something that is showing what the overlay district is going to be?
Yes, we will eventually. We don't currently.
I think we've already weighed in on not wanting to have the wooded area as part of the solar district bylaw change, and I'd really encourage you to just include the area of the parking lot and not the wooded area. We can always extend it if it needs to be, and it makes sense to do that for some reason, but I think we've already provided direction that says we do not want that included in the solar district, the wooded area.
Okay, I didn't get that direction from before. I thought we just said that we didn't want the solar panels there, not that we shouldn't include it in the district.
Yeah, I think the
Right.
school committee would probably like the opportunity to evaluate whether it would be appropriate to do something like that in the future.
Okay, I think you're hearing something different here.
Yeah, so we'll have to talk to town council and the other members of the working group to decide if it's possible for us to come up with a wording that would eliminate that, and if that's what we want to actually do and propose. Because keep in mind, if my understanding is correct from town council, that the school committee is responsible for these lands.
Yes, but not for the overlay districts.
Right. Okay.
They control the line, but so it's.
Right. Okay. So, I guess we'll look into that.
Thank you.
Jenny's story received the message.
All right.
Very exciting. I really like the way it looks at the, you take the conceptual designs that we saw at the beginning and what we're seeing now. I really like the transfer one. I think that's
Yeah, they
great.
did a really nice job improving
Now
it.
the Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts can have something to be under. And I like the design. I like it being at the parking lot, and I think that's not. I think that's kind of
It was
that's
exciting too.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, the process going forward from here, right, we've got to get everything approved at town meeting and then go through site plan review and all that stuff to actually get something built. And they are still hoping to get it built this summer, so
Yeah.
we're on a tight clock to get stuff done.
So basically, this is what we have to have ready for town meeting.
Jonathan, if timing wise, we don't make the $60,000 level, what's the next level lower from that?
I'd have to double check, but it does go down fairly substantially with each block. It's probably at least $5,000 a year per block, but I'd have to actually run the numbers, and I don't have them in front of me.
We're working very hard to get, so once the lease agreement is signed, then the Emerson was able to apply for connectivity, and that would allow them to enter the block So it's one of those things where, you know, it's open until it fills. It's not a time deadline. So hopefully, if those things line up.
So, but the earliest it could happen would be April.
So it's not dependent on town meeting.
Oh, it's not?
But it's, well, yeah.
The town, we could actually execute the lease contingent upon the town meeting vote.
I'm just
But they
saying.
could get into a more advantageous funding block if we were to execute the lease within the next month or so, let's say. And then if town meeting doesn't approve it, then it all goes away, but they'd be into a better funding situation by having the lease approved.
I guess the real pickle we would be in is if they approve the solar but not the parking.
But could you get back to us on what the next block, how much we would lose if we went to the next block?
I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I remember when Eric Zimmerman made the public comment that if we're going to do this, we had to do this in a way that would make Carlisle proud of us. And these renderings certainly look like they fit that bill.
Yeah, they look really great. Great work. Thank you guys very much. Okay. Agricultural Commission. Right to farm.
Right to farm. So you all have the bylaw draft that we've sent. We believe we should do it this year, because, you know, many of the citizens of Carlisle and those that may want to move to Carlisle will know that it's the town of the policy of the town to conserve, protect, and encourage agriculture here in the town. We are ready to go. The bylaw, I think, is fairly straightforward. It is a reiteration of current law that already exists. We don't interfere with any other bylaw that's currently on the books. Westford, Chelmsford, Lincoln, Littleton, and Weston all have right to farm bylaws in their towns. So I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, and had the draft bylaw changed from the last one that we saw the last time you were here? Have there been any changes to it? Okay. And so I think I just want to follow up on the question that I had, because you answered it, and just want to make sure everybody knows that it was answered. My question was whether or not the right to farm bylaw conflicted with our noise bylaw, and you found that no, it doesn't, because in fact it's already been excluded from the right from the noise bylaw.
Yes.
Okay. And was that checked with you, Tom? That was okay. Questions?
Come on.
What's that?
No question.
We had this discussion last time, so
Yeah.
nothing has changed.
We didn't want to skip over them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Have them in
and it's
again.
good just
Yeah.
to follow up on the noise part, because you answered
Yeah,
it to us, and,
No conflict.
you know, all three people watching CCTV.
Absolutely.
Okay, Harry, do you have any questions?
No, I see absolutely no downside to doing this, so.
Okay, so he's not gonna vote in favor of it. Luke, your general sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry you sat here so long.
Well,
That's all right. It's interesting to learn about the solar project.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Get a couple cows.
Just back on the solar project for half a second. The zoning change that town council is working on that would include the school parcels. The board has to vote to refer that to the planning board for public hearing, because it's a zoning change.
Uh-huh.
So
But
I actually got
when do we get to see it?
I've got a draft of that,
But this
as
is,
of this
well, we
afternoon.
just talked about changes to this, right? When does it have to, when do we, what's the latest?
They,
I think I have an email.
oh, yeah, and when the planning board needed to,
Well, you heard what we want. You heard our comments.
Well, it refers to 4 assessors parcels. We have to see which parcels those are and include the ones that encompass this project, correct? If I've heard the board correctly.
Right, was delineating it that way.
So I'm not familiar with that. Denny's been doing the drafting on that, so we'll have to consult with her.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess my question is, do we have to refer it today, or can we maybe
I would ask the board to take a vote to refer it, but we don't actually send it until we amend the language to include the parcels that the board wants.
well, and
And we're not locked in on specific language. So-
okay,
So we're referring to them a version. We can change the version.
You could present an amended version of the public hearing,
Yeah.
okay.
but they can't schedule the public hearing until
I see.
until they,
Okay, so all we're doing is getting the clock going for when it has to be
Correct.
scheduled, so we can,
right, we can
Clean it up
still
before
clean up the
that.
language, but they need to schedule the hearing.
okay. All right. Is there a motion?
I move we forward the proposed zoning bylaws to the planning board, public hearing.
For, hold on one second. Okay, can I give a proposed motion that you?
Sure.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Is there a motion to, what is the term?
Refer?
Is there a motion to refer the changes to the zoning bylaws for large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic facilities? Oh, no, for ground-mounted solar, or is it just for the solar overlay district?
I think it's both
It's all
the height,
section 5.8.
yeah,
Okay.
it's also the
Is
height
there
of the canopy at the
motion
transfer
to
station.
refer zoning bylaw changes to sections section 5.8 in all of its subsections? Is that good enough?
Second?
Okay, sorry about that.
It's all right, go right ahead.
All right, any
Like
further
what we said.
discussion? Okay, Carrie?
Kissinger, aye?
Brown eye?
Louis, aye.
Okay, it's referred.
All right.
Okay, supplemental complete streets design funds. We don't have anything.
Linda again?
This
gotta-
this is gonna be really quick too. This is not actually about the design funds. As you remember, we talked about the design funds not covered by complete streets would be covered by the operating budget, so, I just have to know, how was the event today?
It was wonderful. We got $250,000. That's my
I'm
kind of
sorry,
meeting.
this is, yeah, this is it.
Go to more of
This
those.
is it,
Can
yeah.
I touch it?
Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
What she's referring to is today, the state awarded the town of Carlisle $250,000 for its complete street project.
For pedestrian safety and access improvements in town center. So, this article is actually about,
You're gonna use the screen again, Melinda?
Yeah.
So they might wanna move.
I didn't know that's what 250,000.
so the warrant article is actually about implementing the crosswalk safety recommendations from the engineering study that was done last fall.
You don't need the Wi-Fi.
And this should be quick depending on how much, because I don't feel like I have to provide a lot of background. The board will recall that this came up in response to residents' concerns over safety issues at crosswalks in and around town center, mainly on Bedford Road. There was a public forum a little over a year ago where this was discussed and some things were set into motion, one of them being that we engaged with Tech, the engineering firm, to begin following the steps that would enable Carlisle to apply for funding for the Complete Streets program. So, let's see. glasses. This would address pedestrian safety and access. So you remember we adopted the Complete Streets policy. They assisted us with developing the prioritization plan. And once that was accepted by the state, we were eligible to apply for funding for Complete Streets. What was not considered in the engagement was a specific, more drilled down look at safety issues at those crosswalks. So it was determined that, and TSAC recommended, and this board directed us to expend funds to conduct an engineering study to look specifically at how we could improve safety at 3 representative crosswalks on Bedford Road. So the one from Library to Ferns, 142 Bedford Road, where there were several crashes and observed unsafe conditions, and Banta Davis. So we engaged with Stamsky and McNary to look at existing conditions and make recommendations specifically about how we could improve safety at those crosswalks. And the engineering report became available this fall. And there were several recommendations. And just to refresh your memory, Deb and I were here in November, and we had talked about, this is what we had talked about at the time, because of the timing, we didn't know whether we were going to receive Complete Streets funding or not. And some of the things that were recommended in the report were covered by our Complete Streets grant application, but then there were a couple of things that were not. So they would have required additional funding. And at the time, the conversation was really kind of about, well, what should we do? How should we plan for this? And the conclusion was we would have, we'd consider 2 warrant articles. If we didn't get the funding to implement the recommendations at each of the 3 crosswalks, the ones in yellow were the ones that had the price tag associated with it. The ones with blue were ones that DPW would probably be able to cover. So the good news is we did receive the funding, so that means that in order to implement the additional crosswalk safety recommendations, we will be going with the $50,000 warrant article. So we got funding for projects 1, 2, and 4. And like I said, there were some recommendations, such as including the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at the 2 mid-block crossings, 142 Bedford Road and Banta Davis. The recommendation was to have an advanced warning flashing beacon associated with that. That's been shown to significantly reduce accidents at those locations where mid-block crossing is sited and has a speed limit of below 40 miles per hour. So both of those fit that bill. And the other was for the crosswalk treatment for the raised crosswalk from Library to Ferns. And that was it. So with this warrant article, and in conjunction with the Complete Streets funding that we're going to get, this will allow the Board of Selectmen to implement those crosswalk safety recommendations on Bedford Road.
So, this is saying that, if you could just go back one more, are these projects based upon recommendations from the engineering, or recommendations, based upon the recommendations that were stated during the public forum?
No, this is from the engineer's report, from Stamsky and McNary's analysis of those crosswalks specifically, and their recommendations of what to do. So some of the things that they recommended were already included with our grant application, but there were a couple of items that weren't, so that's what this is about.
Okay, 'cause that's not what that warrant article is saying, right? Oh, that's the warrant article, not, I thought
Mhm.
I thought the next page was what was the proposed wording.
No, this is to request the town to vote and raise and appropriate, borrow or transfer from available funds up
Okay.
to 50,000. This is kind of the funding breakdown. Any questions?
Do you have any idea what the fourth one might be costing?
So we started, the Complete Streets group has started to discuss the work. We've requested design estimates now from 2 additional firms, and we got one from Tech already. We should have those probably by next week. And one of the considerations for us is, how we can incorporate any aesthetic features that we might like to have, as part of this work. Obviously, the grant is for construction funding. It addresses pedestrian safety and access only. This work is being done in, our town center. So there will be considerations, and we've already begun talking with the Historical Commission about that, and some ideas about how we might be able to potentially generate funds to address anything that comes up in those discussions. Also, we've asked, if we're gonna try to see if there's a landscape architect in town that might be able to, work with our group as well.
And do you know, total aside, but do you know at what point will we start to see some of the preliminary engineering work and design changes to be able to provide input into that? Because it's a pretty substantial potential change to the center of town.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we have plenty of opportunity to
Right.
impact that change.
So we have the concepts, and from there, like I said, we've started discussions with a couple of different engineering firms, and we're waiting for those for estimates to come back. And once that comes in, we'll have a better sense. We'll look at those side by side, and we'll be able to, start to advance that discussion at that point.
Okay.
But certainly,
We'll have an opportunity to weigh in on that.
absolutely, and there should be also public
Mhm.
forums on this as
Right.
well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Linda, Tammy Gouvet was there today, and she's gonna send us pictures of the presentation ceremony.
Oh, that would be great. I'm sure that probably the mosquito would like that too.
Yep.
So if there are, they should be copied.
Okay, Carrie, did you have any questions?
No, I don't.
I didn't actually mean thank you. I think we're all done. We were gonna come up here.
Oh, okay.
You don't have any questions? Kind of our second round through it?
Yeah.
Well, then I guess I
Discussed this previously.
The sound level has gone down quite a bit, unless you're just speaking less forcefully, but it's harder to hear for some reason.
It's getting
We were
later.
speaking more softly, Carrie.
So there was one other thing that Tim had mentioned, that we should create an official Complete Streets committee or task force or whatever, right? We already have. We have the working group that's been working on this up to this point. But you wanted to formalize that in some way, right?
Yes, and I think I totally dropped the ball on that with Tim, so I'll have to come back to you,
Well,
Tim.
Right, no, yeah, we don't have it on this agenda, but we
Right.
did want to formalize the
Yeah.
committee.
all right.
'Cause we're
So I
talking
can
real money.
provide to you the list of kind of who's on it now, and what boards have been represented and what committees are already represented there. And it's probably going to look very similar to what's going on now.
Okay.
And the other thing is that I want to say is, I'm very optimistic about this, and I'm hopeful, hopefully this goes well, and that this is an ongoing program that the state has. So once we complete this project, we're eligible to apply right away for future projects. So we should keep that in mind.
Yeah, so I guess one thing that I will say, just to give some immediate feedback, is, I'm not at all against the 50,000 for the crosswalks. But what I worry about is the amount of work that we need to do to get the 250,000 spent, I think by next July, right?
You're right,
And so
July
I'm just wondering if
2020.
it makes sense to stage them.
No, because, no, that's a good question, but no, because the installation will be done in conjunction with this work this summer. So the second set of signs, for example, need to be linked to the ones at the crosswalk. So they're the advanced warning signs, and they
So
would be
it's
linked.
the
So
same
it's,
company implementing everything?
they would be, the installation would happen all at once, yeah. And so additionally, the crosswalk treatments that would be done in the town center, well, that would have to be done during the construction. So you'd want to be ready to go with that.
Okay, so we're asking the engineers to bid on everything?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, all right, thanks.
okay.
That's it for the warrant articles?
Yes.
Okay, and so next time we have which ones?
Cemetery deeds.
The list is for the 12th.
You got it.
Have it?
Okay. And so when do we hear about this one?
That one is it's a citizen's petition, so it goes on the warrant,
No matter what.
no matter what.
Okay.
You can schedule time to discuss it, but there's no discretion. It has to go on the warrant. As is. It can't be amended in any way.
Okay.
But next time, it's the planning board zoning articles, the master plan funding, 2123 Bedford Road, CCRSD capital article. They're coming to talk about their capital project. And the Household Recycling Committee has that resolution regarding pay-as-you-throw that they'd like the board to put on the warrant.
Yep.
So those four next time.
Okay, is 2123, is that a citizen one?
Yes, it is. That's the one that Eric Adams and
Yeah,
Angus
so
Beasley.
why would we hear about one but not both of them?
Oh, no, I get, you're right. You're
So let's
you're right.
put the deer one on for March
Okay.
12th.
Sure. Okay.
So I think that some of you anyway are here, so this will be on the March 12th agenda. So you'll be asked to do a presentation. Uh-huh.
I know that the Board of Selectmen was considering doing an article. This is totally separate, but this is just the article that I had submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so March 12th.
Yes, this would be yours, and I think what we would need to discuss after hearing yours, because yours will go on, is there a need for another article? Because if this one passes, then there's no need for anything else, right?
You mean passes at the town meeting or passes at the March 12th?
Well, we don't have a pass or fail say. It's a citizen's petition, so this is going to town meeting as is.
Do you have a recommendation?
Well, we haven't, that's, so, so what we're doing now is we're hearing from the people who are presenting their articles. That's what we did today. That's what we'll be doing on the 12th. You'll be doing your presentation. And then at a future meeting, we will be taking a position on them. But all it is a position. It's town meeting that decides. So probably won't be taking a position on March 12th. But that would be your opportunity to come in and tell us about it, so that then we would take a position on it.
Very good.
Yes.
One other question. The article today, I think, was allocated about 15 minutes each. Is that what is going to be the allocation for the time, so I can plan a presentation?
So we'll have 5 next time. Yeah, I think that's probably a reasonable, let's see, we had, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, we had a little bit more than 15 this time, but some of them were really big ones. So I would plan on 10 or 15 minutes.
And we could do just what we saw today. I mean, verbal, view graphs, whatever we bring in is.
Yep, just keep in mind, anything that you present is public record, so just if you could make sure we have a copy of it, so that it can be attached to the meeting, or be referenced in the meeting, in the minutes.
Thank you,
But yeah, it's fine if you want to do a PowerPoint, you don't have to. The one thing about doing a PowerPoint is that it is then on CCTV, so if anybody streams it later or anything, they can see the PowerPoint and not have to come in and look at the, okay? All right, so you'll be on the 12th.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So cemetery deeds.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to transfer land in the public burial ground to, oh boy, Xiaoming Wan, 160 Commonwealth Avenue, Boston, Mass. 166-2736, at Green Cemetery Lot D25, graves 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in,
Kissinger, aye.
Oskalilowai.
Brown eye?
Louis, aye.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to transfer the land in the public burial ground to John H. Keating and Celeste U. What is that? I can't read it. H-O-E?
Hone.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Hone.
Hone. 133 Forest Park Drive at Green Cemetery, Lot D, 192, graves 3 and 4.
Second.
Any,
Kissinger, aye.
Oskalilowai.
Brown eye?
Louis, aye.
It's printed out weird, it's all fuzzy. I move that the
Sure
Board
is.
of Selectmen, it may be at this time of night, approve the request from Patricia Lasky as custodian of Green Cemetery deeds 629 and 630 to transfer land back to the town of Carlisle Cemetery Lot D 288, graves 1 through 4, and Lot D 289, graves 1 through 4.
Second.
Kissinger, aye.
Brown eye?
Oskalilowai, Jesus.
Louis, aye.
Okay, thank you. Tim, handing it over to you.
Okay, the town administrator's report. Some of these items are kind of holdovers from the meeting we did have 2 weeks ago. So the first item is regarding the bond anticipation note sale. You'll recall that you already came in and signed off on that. So I guess we're asking for a vote after the fact, authorizing the board to execute those bond authorization documents, which have been so executed.
I move that
Completely
the,
backwards, but
I move that the board approve a bond anticipation note sale, $3.6 million short-term borrowing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Kissinger, aye.
Oskalilowai.
Brown eye?
Louis, aye.
okay. Item number 2 is a little bit out of date as well. There was a modification necessary to the telecommunications site plan at the Banner Davis location. They had to move slightly relocate the driveway on the site, and that the planning board held a hearing last night, and in fact did approve that amendment to the site plan. So that is going forward, and again, it was a pretty minor revision, and the building commissioner was aware of it as well. So it's more of information for you at this point. Item number 3, got a request from the Boston Brain Tumor Society again for a bike ride through the Carlisle's streets on Sunday, May 19th. This is a fundraiser. It's an annual request, and you've approved it in years past. We have a motion for your action.
I move that the board approve the Boston Brain Tumor Society's request to conduct a portion of its Sunday, May 19th, 2019 bicycle ride in the town of Carlisle, with the understanding that they shall consult with the police department regarding traffic and roadway safety issues.
Second.
Kissinger, aye.
Oskalilowai.
Brown eye?
Louis, aye.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is requesting, Chief Fisher requesting the appointment of 2 special police officers, Jared Lehman and Eloi Roig, as special police officers.
So I'll just jump in.
Yep.
If it's okay.
Go
So Chief Fisher did call me a couple weeks ago. We had postponed this meeting because of the snow. And so I went ahead and told him that to expect that we would be appointing them, and therefore he should go ahead and start sending them to training and get them uniforms and everything. Sorry, I kind of did it out of order, but he was under pressure, and it seemed like the right thing for us to do.
Great. So if, does the board want to just take a vote to confirm the appointment of those 2 gentlemen?
I would like to.
I move that the board confirm the appointment of Jared Lehman and Eloi Rug as special police officers for the town of Carlisle.
Second.
Kissinger, aye.
Oscar, aye.
Brown eye?
Lewis, I.
Okay. Thank you. Number 5, very briefly, we have a proposal from Cindy Nock of the League of Women Voters for a new policy regarding signs in the Rotary. Rather than discuss it here this evening, I would suggest that the board refer it to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee to study and bring an opinion and a recommendation back to you on that proposed new policy.
Okay, do you have any idea did we get the? We did?
I think you did. Basically, it's recommending signs on each of the islands as you come into the center. Right now, we have a one sign at a time policy, and this would allow multiple signs on the islands themselves.
And
But I would suggest that the traffic safety
Yeah, I would
committee
suggest
take a look at that.
that they take a look at it and the Historic Commission also take a look at it, right? Although it's temporary signage, so they don't really have any, never mind, it's just temporary signage. It's not permanent, right?
Okay. No, that's fair. So the TSAC should look at it.
Yep.
And then, let's see, next item, as you know, there's traditionally, there's a Housing Authority appointment to the Community Preservation Committee, and that appointment's made by this board. Currently is not a representative, so we put it on there so the board would discuss and make that appointment. The Community Preservation Committee.
So, we had our first meeting on Monday, and David came. David's been a member of CPC before through the planning board. And thankfully, he's expressed interest, so, as being the housing rep. So I'm expecting he will write up the grant agreements and prepare stuff for town.
Ready to do some work, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, slacker, yeah.
So is there a motion to appoint
David Friedman?
David Friedman of something Hutchins Lane?
301.
Is it 304?
301, I think it's 301.
301, Hutchins Lane, to the Community Preservation Committee as represented the Carlisle Housing Authority,
Housing Trust.
Housing
Authority.
Authority.
Yeah, he's the
Oh,
authority
they're still,
member now.
still in existence, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second?
Kissinger, aye.
Oscar, aye.
Brown eye,
Lewis, I.
forgot my name.
Okay, and then Kate had reminded me that the board needs to make 2 appointments to the Housing Trust. Maureen Deary and Jonathan Stevens were recommended to be appointed as the at-large members of the Housing Trust. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, and I know Maureen's here tonight,
here.
but
Thank you for coming.
probably hoping to be appointed. Having sat through the last couple hours.
Is there a motion to appoint Maureen Deary and Jonathan Stevens to the Carlisle Affordable Housing Trust? Address is to be obtained later.
So moved.
Still, yeah,
Make it?
Amy,
So moved,
on the
yeah.
blank.
Kissinger, aye.
you can-
Oscar, aye.
That's her there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Brown eye?
Lewis, I.
You don't need to know how to spell Stevens, do you?
Is it PH or V?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
All right. Then the upcoming meeting schedule, we're gonna have our next coordination meeting on the 12th with the Finance Committee and moderator. Long-term caps and the Municipal Facilities Committee. There'll be some additional presentations on warrant articles. And we'll be hearing the citizen petition regarding hunting. And we'll have a draft of the annual town meeting warrant for you to review. The goal is to finalize the warrant and all recommendations by the meeting on the 26th. We plan to go to the printers by that Friday, March 29th. That's really
Cutting it close.
kind of cutting it very close, but we've been assured that if we have it to the printer by that Friday, we'll have it back in 2 weeks' time, and we'll be able to mail it out to town residents. A lot to do between now and then, but
And also, just so everybody remembers, there is another Board of Selectmen meeting on the 7th
Yes.
right, for the
Yeah.
interviews.
for the interviews.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. And then we have minutes.
I just need you, the town clerk asked for you to just
Oh, I'm sorry.
officially receive that notice of caucus and sign it as a
Oh, got that. Right,
So sign the one with the holes in it?
No,
I
this
have
is-
coffee stains on mine.
I've got it, I've got the, I'm sorry, I've got the
So,
one for signature.
You know, this is the first time we've had one on a Friday night, right?
This is the, yeah, Alan's got the
Friday.
official notice.
Yeah. I'm a little,
Sign here,
I'm a little bit worried that, I mean, I was back and forth with Tim about
Yeah.
this. I'm a little bit worried because so many people go skiing and everything and,
We each need to sign it? It's for the Board of Selectmen, so.
Yeah, well, I guess you can all,
Yeah, you can all sign
might
it.
as well all sign
as
it
long as
now.
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a Friday, which is a new concept.
so mark it in your calendars, Friday, March 29th, 7 PM here at the in the Clark Room, right in here. Who's going to be moderating it? Do you know?
I don't
Okay.
know.
Usually done by the League of Women Voters, right?
Right. Tim Hall used to do it, but didn't do it last year,
It was a
right?
woman from Concord last time, I think.
Right, I don't.
I
We'll find out. We'll ask the clerk.
So anyway, I just because there are people here, so we have, you know, the moderator's an annual one. There are 2 members from the Board of Selectmen, 1 member from the Board of Assessors, 2 members from the Board of Health, 1 member from the Housing Authority, for a 5-year term, and another for a 3-year term, and another for a 2-year term. 3 members of the Planning Board for 3-year terms, 2 members for the School Committee, and 1 member of the Library Trustees for a 3-year term. So this is on March
29th.
Friday.
29th, which is before the election.
The election is Tuesday, March
Yeah.
7th.
I mean, before the, so it can't be Tuesday, March 7th.
May 7th.
May 7th.
May 7th, May 7th.
But it's before town meeting.
Town meeting's April 29th, right? So it's a month before.
Okay, that's too bad, because then there's gonna be people nominated for 3 positions that may not,
Well, it's possible.
yeah.
Nobody may get nominated.
Okay, so anybody interested in serving on a town committee, now's the time. Thank you. So I could not, I couldn't open the packet before, for some reason, so I was not able to review these, but if everybody else did, I'll go along with everybody else's edits. Is there just the one we put off last time, didn't we? Yeah. Anybody have any comments of the meetings for Tuesday, January 8th?
I did, but they were submitted already. I assume are reflected in here.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
Were they all minor? Yeah.
Yeah. And nothing of substance.
Yeah.
My name, things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I move that we approve, that the board approve the minutes of Tuesday, January 8th, 2019, as submitted.
Second,
Kissinger, aye.
Oscar Lilo, aye.
Brown eye.
Lewis, aye.
Thank you.
I move that the board of selectmen approve the minutes of Tuesday, January 29th, 2019, as submitted.
Wait 1 second.
Boy.
So,
Did you want to read these again?
nope. I'm fine.
Second,
I would refer you to the attachment between Claude Van Rosgen and myself relative to pay as you throw. It's attached to the end of those minutes. It would be easy to miss them, so I encourage you to take a look at it because it speaks directly to the economics of it, of pay as you throw. Kissinger, aye. Other than that,
Oscar Lilo, aye.
Brown eye.
Lewis, I.
Okay. I'm gonna pull
He's
that
actually
up.
got a neat little calculator.
Okay, so that concludes our public portion of the Board of Selectmen meeting. So thank you very much, everybody.
Quick question, just about the meeting on
Sure.
March 29th, there's two events. The warrant article goes, the warrant goes to the printer, and then you mentioned a list of positions open on March 29th, and I didn't quite understand, one of which I was a moderator and one which was other positions from the town.
So-
Is that like a special election?
No, so that's the town caucus. And so that's where people who want to run for it, it's not the only way to, you can get it through getting a number of signatures. But if you go to the town caucus, if you're interested in one of the roles, you can have, you can go there, make sure that you have somebody who will nominate you for one of the roles and somebody who will second it. And then you will be able to run for that position. This is, yes, for any of the vacant positions. What I did was I listed off the ones that are coming up for election. So those will be on the election ballot on May 7th. So if you want to run for a position, come to the caucus, get nominated, get seconded, and then you'll be, if you miss it, it's okay. There is another way to do it. It's just more difficult. Yeah. Did I say that right?
You didn't talk about race, religion,
We're on our best behavior when you're here. As soon as you walk out that door.
Yes, we're all set. Thank you.
And I'm gonna stop and not continue later.
That's correct. We are,
I will not get your adjournment, I won't get your end.
that's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Do we want to have the going into? open
Oh,
session?
yes.
Okay, I move that the board enter into executive session pursuant Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A, paragraphs 2, 3, and 6, to discuss the strategy with respect to union, police officers, and non-union, Chief Fisher, negotiations, potential litigation, J.J. Supple, and to consider the purchase of real property, 108 Stern Street, as an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the town's bargaining, negotiating, and litigating positions, and then afterwards, the board will not return to open session.
Kissinger, aye.
Oscar Lilloye.
Brown eye?
Lewis, I.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.